man, what's going on here? These children were screwed just like as if they had cancer.
How would you describe how Scientology is viewed by people who live in Clearwater?
We've lost.
Scientology is hated in this city.
Yeah, statutes of limitation are gone, but I did take my first bribe, and I'll explain this.
Like, I thought my community was full of drama, man. Awesome. Well, we're recording everywhere. Thank you for helping me, Chris, in SPTV Studios here.
Here we go.
Cheers.
Recording number 1.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think the way this is most fun is if it's just totally casual. It does feel a little intimidating knowing that we got cameras on, but it's funny. It doesn't bother me when it's over there, but when it's here, it's a little like, ooh.
I don't even see the cameras.
Well, this is our first chat. Let's chat about something. Who are you, George Labanca? How did you get into watching Scientology content? How did we meet? Let's tell the story.
Sure. One day, this beautiful young lady walked into my house, friend of my daughter's, your oldest, and she had made tacos. She was a great cook. Started talking, and my daughter says, "Dad, her dad's got a channel against Scientology." I said, "What? Never heard of you." Even though I live in Clearwater, I'd never even heard of it or the channel. So I started binge watching, and fortunately, I had just retired. And next thing you know, I watched a lot of videos. When you go down that rabbit hole, it gets real interesting.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed your videos, and then I got to meet some other folks, which we'll talk about, and how we all came together. But that was how it got started, And then some events came up, like there was a Styx concert, and you got to come over and meet some people at my house, and I was pleasantly surprised at how many people recognized you. Like, oh, you're that guy. Especially my cousin, the Richard Lewis guy from New York. Oh, I know you. Yeah, you're that guy. Yeah. So that's how we met. And I started watching the videos, and we started. You were by your own admission, you were a bit of a recluse. Like you weren't getting out much. So I said, let's go get a beer. Let's go do something. Let's go get some dinner. And even that first night downtown Clearwater was a Tuesday night, and we walked in, and we realized the place was absolutely empty, just empty. And you went live out there, and growing up in Scientology is your channel. And I said to you, I've been surrounded by Scientology since I've been in Clearwater. And you said, what a great name for a channel.
That's right.
So surrounded by Scientology, because we started telling stories, and some of the way that I got associated with the exposure of Scientology in downtown Clearwater was not good. I tell the story when I started my first job in Florida was selling restaurant supplies in downtown Clearwater. I had over 40 clients down there, restaurants, bars. You can count on one hand how many there are there now. Yeah, so once I got involved and started watching, and had been retired, so I was almost like during COVID when people started binge watching. I started binge watching. What I was soon learned was SPTV, and found about a lot of good people as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how long have you been in Clearwater?
46 years. Mm-hmm. I came here a few years after the Church of Scientology put their stakes into the Fort Harrison Hotel. Fortunately for me, I had a cousin that was here, and he said, don't go near there. It's a cult. It's a cult. So from day one, I've always been told it's a cult. I've never known anybody that had good things to say about it. And I watched what they started doing in downtown Clearwater. You start hearing a little bit more, reading. It's crazy.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are under the impression that Scientology controls or runs Clearwater. And it's weird, right? Because what they do own and control or own is most of the real estate in downtown Clearwater. But Clearwater's a weird city. It's downtown, doesn't have the majority of the economic activity of Clearwater. We've got Clearwater Beach. Right. So our downtown is a ghost town. Mm-hmm. So when people hear that Scientology owns so much of downtown Clearwater, they think, wow, they control the city, they own the city, they run the city. And it's like, in a weird way, controlling downtown Clearwater is the least effective way you could try to control Clearwater. Like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
This is something that's easy to misunderstand when people see all the headlines and even all the videos. Mm-hmm. Even videos I do about how much of downtown Clearwater is owned by Scientology. But it is a weird reputation that Clearwater, Florida has as being a Scientology city.
Sure.
And yet, Scientology is hated in this city.
Yeah.
You compare that to, like, for example, Mormonism in Salt Lake City. There's so
Revered.
many Mormons. You could never say Mormonism is hated in Salt Lake City. No, they actually own and control Salt Lake City. That's not true for Scientology in Clearwater. And so I remember when you and I were talking about, you've been in Clearwater for so long. You know frickin' everybody in this town. People know you, nonprofit people, business people, media people, advertising people. And I was like, oh, man, the stories of someone who has been surrounded by Scientology and growing up in a city where Scientology really is hated. I was like, the stories of you and people like you and friends of yours who've been here for generations. I'm like, this is actually one of the things that, if you remember when we were talking about doing this in studio, these recordings here, it's like, there's only so many former Scientologists in the area who are going to want to come in here. And I'm like, but you know what would be awesome? There's thousands of people who've grown up in the area surrounded by Scientology. Who are going to have some crazy stories that would be really fun to tell.
Sure. And let's talk about downtown, the morphos, if you will, the metamorphosis. You might have been one of these people, but we would go downtown. We'd still want to do stuff downtown. Then all of a sudden there would be this wave of zombie-like people walking through in these outfits and these uniforms, all smoking cigarettes and just cutting through us almost on purpose. And I've heard you tell some stories that, like they wanted people to feel weird, non-Scientologists to feel weird about being downtown. And over time, they accomplished that. We actually put on some running events downtown, reindeer run and some other things. And it just, we know it as a ghost town. But when there's those people walking around that are zombified, it just adds this new dimension to it. Like, it's science fiction. It's absolutely science fiction.
Yeah. So how would you, no one can speak for like everyone, but how would you describe how Scientology is viewed by people who live in Clearwater?
Well, very similar to the way I was for years. We just said, we've lost it. I guess there's not much we can do about it. Every story you heard, they're buying more property, they're doing this, they're doing that. And it was, most people just thought there's nothing we could ever do. And then when I met you and we talked about some of the aspects of what you're doing and how you're comfortable in what you do, I started feeling more comfortable talking about it, because I've always really despised the cult for the reasons of disconnection and just fair game, all these horrible things that are so well documented. When you see Gabe Caceres, the mayor of Clearwater, talking about how the young Scientology women would call back when there were landlines and the phone would ring and his wife would pick the phone up. Hey, Gabe, is Gabe home? Can you come back out? We had such a good time last night.
Oh, wow.
And it was just, they were just setting him up to try and ruin his marriage.
Wow.
And so we watched that over the years. And then the St. Pete Times, which is now the Tampa Bay Times, they did, I think it was the first expose somewhere in the early 80s, and they won a Pulitzer Prize for that. And I know one of the families as one of the authors of that, and they were harassed, horribly harassed. So there was a fear. There was a fear factor, like it was this big million-person entity or church, and they had all this power. Then you find out it's not. It's not what it's put out to be, but still scared of them. And the fair game and the lawsuits and things, everybody's in fear of that. What's happened for me, Aaron, is more people have said to me, I get it now. We support what you guys are doing. How can we help? Before it used to be, oh, no, no, I'm not going to touch that.
That's right.
Yeah, so the perception is definitely changing. And that, well, what I do, and sometimes people cannot connect the dots. You connect the dots for them. When I'm talking to somebody in Clearwater, I go, how's your property tax? And, it's up there. You know why? Because 60% of the downtown property, approximately, sits with vacant buildings owned by a religious organization that doesn't pay taxes on it. Your taxes go up as a result of it. The services are still there. The need for the services is there. The revenue's not. Then you take vacant buildings that produce no revenue. One of my first videos, the week after you and I, the Tuesday night you and I were in Clearwater, my third day live on YouTube, surrounded by Scientology, shameless plug, I shot downtown Clearwater on Friday night, drove in my car and went to downtown Dunedin. And I showed the contrast between a town with 17,000 people that was as vibrant as hell, 40 to 50 restaurants, bars, people everywhere. Clearwater, nothing. That video, for me, had 10,000 views that first 24 hours. I was like in shock. What is this thing? What am I getting into here, this YouTube thing? It's because people want to know. They want to see. Then the international community and SPTV community started watching some of the videos and realizing They had no idea how large the footprint was of vacant buildings in Clearwater. You and I were doing a live. We were down near the Sound, and his car comes whipping up, and they had followed us from over by the 3 motels. What are the 3 motels on Fort Harrison?
The
Trade
Clipper, the Trade Winds. I always forget the third one. Bayside.
Bayside. And that's where they stage.
Some of the outdoor trainees stay there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and we happened upon a muster. And that's when I learned what a muster was. Really? They have to count heads 3 times a day to see who's escaped? You know, and talk about Earth being a prison. You know, so I'm like, this is like surreal. Well, that night we went from there, we went downtown, and this car comes whipping up. Now, you know, we never know, you know, friend or foe, but they're like, hey, we came looking for you. We live across the street from the motels. We knew you guys were down here. So they figured out where we were. And she's the lady that said, doesn't it look like an empty movie set in North Korea? And she was talking about Fort Harrison. Beautiful buildings, painted nicely, well lit. Any people there? No. Producing any revenue? No.
That's right. She had an out-of-town friend that was visiting, and she was taking him of a tour of downtown just to be like, let me show you the creepiest downtown in the United States.
Yeah. And then you were able to add so much color to it in terms of this building and that building, what they own and this and that. That's when it started to click for me. It's like, there's something here. You know, there's a story that needs to be told. And as we tell that story, more and more people get pissed off.
Yeah.
And they are.
Yeah.
And every day I'm out somewhere. About the second week, I was out at Third Friday in downtown Safety Harbor. Same kind of thing. I wanted to go film and show the little town of Safety Harbor, Florida, which is another coastal town, just the east side of Clearwater. Both Dunedin and Safety Harbor border Clearwater. And this Third Friday, it's a big, huge festival. And I would say, you contrast, this is what it could be, folks. Downtown Clearwater for a while had First Friday, and then it fizzled because little Davy, and they said, we're not going to let these people in our backyard. But the funniest thing is when I had my gimbal and I clicked on live, and I wasn't 10 feet into the Third Friday in Safety Harbor, and the first group of 6 people go, aren't you that guy who was on Aaron's channel? Now I'm going, holy shit, what did I get into here? And they just wanted to talk about it and say, keep up the good fight. That's when I kind of knew we were onto something. That I was joining a good cause.
It's true. It's so incredible. One of the greatest benefits is just showing people there's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah.
They're more afraid of you than you are of them.
Almost like snakes, and I know how much you're afraid of snakes.
I am afraid of snakes.
Which is why I haven't shown anybody yet the pictures I have from Honeymoon Island of the rattlesnake that swam right up.
When we were there?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, we weren't there.
We weren't there.
I've been to Honeymoon 1,000 times. I've never seen a rattlesnake. Came swimming right out of the water.
Oh, my God.
Slithered right past us and went over.
Oh, my God.
To the other side.
Did I tell you the girls found the snake?
No. I did not.
They found the snake.
Where was it?
It was next to the toilet in the master bathroom.
The cats didn't get it?
No. Wow. No one knows.
You think they made a truce of some sort?
I don't know.
The snake just escaped.
I don't know.
And which daughter is actually the owner of the snake?
Well, that was part of the problem. My youngest daughter, was the official owner of the snake, and then she decided to move it out to the back patio. But then she decided she didn't want it back. So my middle daughter took possession of the snake, but then the youngest daughter pretended that the middle daughter had stolen it from her. But really, the youngest daughter didn't want it anymore.
So I'm glad the snake is safe.
The snake has been saved.
So the girls are going to move over here. Is that what you're telling me?
Hell no. That snake ain't coming over here. So there's the thing of just showing people there's nothing to be afraid of. Right. And also locals, right? Yeah. Locals who see all the property that Scientology snaps up. Even if you're a local and even if you've been here for generations, what you don't actually know until you start watching some of the videos that we all do, there's no one in the damn buildings.
Nobody.
They don't actually. You'd think, oh, if you live there, you must know Scientology is rather quite small. No, Scientology does a really good job of making themselves appear bigger than they are, and that's one of the reasons they buy all the properties. The other reason is just to keep anyone else from doing anything in downtown Clearwater that will attract non-Scientologists. But there's 120,000 people in Clearwater, Florida, and I'll be damned if there's more than 3,000 Scientologists, and that includes the 1,500 people who never leave those buildings because they're working in there for the next billion years. You can't fill Ruth Eckerd Hall with all the Scientologists in the Tampa Bay area. Never mind Clearwater. You can't fill Ruth Eckerd Hall, which I think has a seat count of somewhere around 2,600.
2,200, I think.
You can't fill Ruth Eckerd Hall with all the Scientologists in Tampa Bay. And if you're a local, you don't actually realize that.
Yeah.
It does require someone to explain it to you, because you look at all the buildings and you're like, oh my God, They say there's millions of them. In fact, Scientology claims there are 15,000 Scientologists, 10,000 or 15,000, not in Tampa Bay, in Clearwater, Florida. That's what they say.
Yeah.
And the truth is, if you look at the voting rolls, because when I ran for council, I had particular visibility into the voter registration records. And you could not find 3,000 Scientologists in Tampa Bay. Mm-hmm. Forget Clearwater, Florida.
Yeah.
So it's one of the, I just think it's going to be one of the benefits of continuing to put out videos and content and showing, we protest down there in downtown Clearwater all the time. These people they won't even come outside. Yeah. They won't even harass us.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I did get to visit Denver. Yeah. And I did get to visit Chicago, and of course we went to Ybor City, but to see orgs that are just where there's not much action.
Yeah.
But ours is a different dynamic. And when I was with Windy City Thetan and Free Xenu Project and some of the others in Chicago recently, they were explaining to their audiences the difference. So we're standing in front of the one building.
Was Denver J out there too?
Denver J was not there while I was there.
Oh, was he in California?
Yeah, he was in California.
Okay.
And Pearl Snap, yeah. So we're on the road. Everybody's going every which way. But it was great. But Windy City was explaining to folks that our dynamic's different because we don't have the recruitment centers. The people that we see on the street absolutely totally ignore us because they're the deepest in, they're the most brainwashed, they're the Sea Org or they're the staff. And one of my big questions now is, have you been through the no answer drill lately? Oh, I see you have. You're doing very good. You passed. Okay. But next time, see about communicating. Work on that skill because your no answer drill has been very good for you. Within my first week, I was barked at by a person I was trying to ask, please tell me something positive about your experience with Scientology. Then I was told to go fornicate myself. And that guy had to go around the building. And by the time he came around the building, we found him on the other side where everybody's there. They just can't help themselves, right? So, they can't be nice to us. They just can't be. And then, one of the things I want to talk about, not necessarily tonight, but another time. And then the lady got mad and said I couldn't film her in public. And I said, well, yes, ma'am, I can. I was very polite about it. And she smacked my camera. Fortunately, it didn't knock it out of my hand. These are expensive cameras and gimbals and things. But their ability to assault us and think it's okay. And every town, everywhere you look, whether it's in Austin or L.A., Chicago, the lady had her umbrella the other night. I don't know if you saw that clip that Natalie had.
I didn't see that.
And she swings a full arm swing and hits the person with the umbrella. You saw me with the umbrella. Oh, it fell. The cameras don't lie. Now, the police do, which is kind of sad. And, no offense to the honest cops out there, but why sometimes they have to do what they do, or like in your situation. If you're going to insist on pressing charges, and we're going to have to press charges against you, where the hell does that come from?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing we can talk about is you are one of two people on the board of the SPTV Foundation who've never been in Scientology. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about your extensive history in the nonprofit world and the similarities that, you've said some things to me about how, you've done a lot of work in the cancer space and helping children with cancer. Mm-hmm. And you've said some really touching things to me about how you see, kids who were born and raised in Scientology. Yeah. And they didn't have that choice.
That's right.
Yeah.
So when I first started getting involved with hospice, hospice asked me, hospice was in the very early stages here in the early 80s in Clearwater, Florida, one of the first hospices. And in fact, Suncoast Hospice became the largest hospice in the country, census-wise. And it was because we had such a large, older population. And so my first couple dozen patients in hospice were older people at the end of life. And one day they called me and said, can you work with children? I said, I don't know, I've never done it before. And they said, well, let's give it a try. So I met a little 8-year-old girl who had leukemia. And we hit it off great. I worked with the family, worked with her. And I didn't have any of my own children at the time, so I realized, okay, I had this inner strength that allowed me to do it. It is not easy to watch a child suffer in any way, shape, or form, and all parents can appreciate that and can relate to that. But as hospice volunteers, we were there just helping the families out. So I became the pediatric specialist in Pinellas County. And when I met a couple more of these kids, I found out about a camp that this organization was doing to give kids respite from their disease. And we just want them to be able to have their life. That was called Camp Good Days. They were out of New York. Their doctors ended up in Tampa Bay. So they opened an office down here, and I ended up being the chairman of that advisory board for Camp Good Days, and that really changed my life. So when you start working with children, cancer affects the entire family. And what I realized was children born with cancer or that are diagnosed with cancer did not choose that. Children born into Scientology did not choose it. But they both suck. And the horrible effects both to the child and the family. Then when I heard your story about disconnection, I heard what disconnection was, but when I heard your story about disconnection and your brother and the different thing, how you and you and Heather were forced to make a decision, those kind of things, I've watched families be torn apart. Divorce rate's pretty high, and I know you just did a relationship video recently. I think the divorce rate in the U.S. is about 50%. Let's just take it at that for right now. Child with cancer, 85% of those families will end up in a divorce.
Really?
The pressures that are put on in addition to normal pressures of life. So as I started meeting more of the second gens, the wonderful people, and hearing their stories, and I would sit there and I would listen to a Liz Copter, and a Kelly Copter, and I would listen to a Liz Gale and a Reese, and all of a sudden I'm going, man, what's going on here? These children were screwed just like as if they had cancer. But then it gets worse, because then when you're trying to cure the disease, your family gets disconnected from you. Somebody's doing nasty, bad shit to you. I'm like, oh, no, this shit's got to stop. So that was the connection that I made. And I'm very strong about that because there's so much pain and suffering, and it doesn't have to be, we can help stop it. And when I watch the protesters, now we all have different styles. I'm a low-key, monotone kind of guy. And I have people standing outside me yelling, it's a cult, you know? Well, everybody's got their own style. But we're getting in their heads. And I happened to flip on Laura FM today, and she had them going out in L.A., boy. I just want to see my father. Is it too much for you to ask you to help tell my dad to come out and see me? Her father she hadn't seen for how many years? And what is wrong with that? There's everything wrong with that.
Yeah. 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 I'm so hopeful for everything that we're going to be able to accomplish, not only with the channels, not only with the protesting, but also with the SPTV Foundation and just public opinion, public awareness, grassroots activism, people seeing, snowballing into elected officials, saying, oh, wait, this is like a super popular position to take. Maybe it is okay to demand that we relook at Scientology's tax-exempt status, and maybe we don't have to worry about what that means for religion in the U.S. or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I connected those dots very well right there. But one of the reasons that elected officials hesitate to pay Scientology any special attention is because they are fed this slippery slope argument by Scientology's paid lobbyists that, whoa, you couldn't possibly go after Scientology without going after all organized religion. And you go, but Scientology's not organized religion. Scientology is a pay-to-play human trafficking cult.
Yeah.
And if you really want to protect organized religion in the U.S., actually one of the best ways to do that would be like, no, Scientology, that's not part of us.
Right. Crimes being committed behind the walls.
Yeah.
But I want to come back to the foundation situation. Like when you and I first met, so I think it's been maybe 6 months now, but it was Aftermath Foundation was your baby. You and Luis. You guys started that, and you guys were doing great things. Finally, there was a path out because, again, for a lot of us that were never in, we don't understand. You didn't have a high school education. You didn't have a college education. You're one of the most articulate people that I met. And I'm watching you on TV, and I'm going, this guy never went to school. How can you be so smart? Well, maybe there are certain things that you had to learn on your own, but whatever. But the drama started, okay? Well, I've been on 5 different boards, and not one of them is void of bullshit drama. I mentioned Camp Good Days earlier. The Mervis family has done phenomenal things. Dr. Tebby at St. Joseph Hospital said, many of these children are alive today because of you guys and what you do with them at the camp. I have to put poison in their body. I got to do horrible things to them. you guys take them and let them be kids. And then we're able to treat them even more aggressively. So when he kind of told me about that aspect of it, I'm like, yeah, I guess we're really kind of doing a good thing. You know, it's good that we're doing this. Well, the Mervis family, after a couple of years, people tried to force them out of their own foundation. We could do it better, right? And they staved that off. And 40 years later now, probably 38 years, Camp Good Days has put over 80,000 children through camps. It also spawned a number of other camps, which is great for the kids. So in Tampa Bay, we were one of the first that did a camp for children with cancer. Just let them be kids. Then American Cancer Society started Rock Camp and Children's Cancer Center, Make-A-Wish Foundation, Miracle Dream Fund, all great organizations. But everybody was working on quality of life. And it got to the point where we'd call kids up and we'd families, we'd say, we got Disney booked for the week of December 3rd. You know, how many tickets would you guys like? Oh, well, we're already going to so-and-so's camp. And we were running out of families to service because there were so many nonprofits. Meanwhile, 2 moms were in the waiting room at St. Joe's for their children to be treated by the doctors. Both kids had tumors. Infants with tumors. And they said, you know what really sucks is there's nobody putting money towards pediatric cancer research. This is what we need to do. So Melissa started the Pediatric Cancer Foundation, and the mission statement is to cure childhood cancer. And we used to say in our board meetings, I was there for 19 years, we would say we're trying to put ourselves out of business. That's what we want. So that's when I really started to relate to SPTV. How do these kids get out? When you're born in 2nd gen or 3rd gen, there's no hope for you. Well, yes, there is. There was a group that got together, raised some money, and we're helping people get out. The Aftermath Foundation. Then the stuff happened, you know, and that goes, so now SPTV, I'm a proud member of the board. And I first told you I'm not ready yet. You know, I don't know enough about everything, and plus my personal life, and still trying to get my kids through school. Again, the more I learned, then I called you back and I said, gee, I hope there's still a spot on the board for me. Because I wanted to be part of it, and I wanted to be able to share my experiences and help people out. And when people, you know, that's a rabbit hole we're not going to go down. Compliments to you, Rabbit, but that's a rabbit hole we're not going to go down tonight. But everyone, even recently, and I've been out now, I served on my last board. I rolled off the Pediatric Cancer Foundation probably about 8 or 9 years ago. When I had my own children, it changed for me. It was a lot more difficult. The pain and suffering that I saw and was able to help families with, and that was now way too close. You know, and my daughter needed some surgery early on. She had some challenges, and it was hard. So, you know, I kind of moved on, but to this day, there was a big fallout at one of the foundations. I'll kind of keep it somewhat generic. And a big power move, and one guy tried to force, we had a board of 24 board members.
24 board members.
Which was a plan that I put in place when I took over, and there's 4 board members. I said, no, this is not going to work. So we worked on a plan with Barb, the executive director, and we came up with a plan for 24 board members. It was fantastic. A lot of community involvement, a lot of great people. And at one point there was a coup. One guy decided he was going to take over the foundation, force people out. Here we go. And so we had an emergency meeting. 23 out of 24 very busy business people in the Tampa Bay area all showed up to an emergency meeting, except one guy who runs a local restaurant group. He was in South Africa researching some new spices or herbs or seafood or whatever. But 23 board members. The vote was 12 to 11. We retained the original founder and the existing person. The other people all went away. And they started that guy started his own foundation. Well, I ran into somebody the other day that was involved with that foundation. I said, how's it going? They just rolled their eyes. Same shit's going on over there right now. 9 years later, someone's forcing somebody out, and somebody doesn't like the way somebody did that. That comes back to a quote you used on one of them. And it's Camp Good Days that had the big sign. You had said pediatric cancer.
Oh, that's right.
That's okay. The big sign when you walked in, the first thing, we can accomplish great things as long as it doesn't matter who gets the credit.
Yeah.
And man, that has stuck with me so much, Then my girlfriend's grandmother at the time, everybody's real involved. If you knew me, you were volunteering at the camps. And to this day, some of our lifelong friends, you know, are from that circle. But Grandma Alice bought a little plaque and from Michelle and I. It said something like, when you die, nobody will remember what car you drive or what house you lived in, but whether you made the difference in a child's life. you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've heard me tell some of the stories. I mean, I've been with kids at their last moment. I've been with parents at the last moment. What we're trying to do at SPTV and with our movement is we want to get these people out of a horrible situation and let them live life.
Yeah.
And I hear some of the protesters yelling, "It's beautiful out here. There's a great life. You're not really free if you can't come." And I love it. And I sit there and I consume hours and hours. I'm getting used to watching on 2X because it's hard.
There's a lot of content.
Oh my gosh.
2X makes it easier.
And then when you do it, when you and Natalie do a video that's on 1.5 or 2X, and I'm watching it too. How did that go on there?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you told me the stories of the type of drama that has occurred on these extremely respectable, distinguished, successful foundations, and you were telling me these stories around the same time that all this Sam Altman open AI stuff was going down, and I'm like, I thought my community was full of drama. Man, it seems like no matter what, no matter what you're involved in, no matter what community you're involved in, you've always got the drama, and that's just the way life is.
Do it from your heart, do the right thing, and be true to it. You know, and we're finding some stuff out behind the scenes right now with some people who maybe not being truthful and or maybe not real, and that gets exposed.
Yeah.
You know what? And hey, you know, I got all kinds of warts and blemishes, and you know, and I'm skinny and I'm fat at different times in my life. And my biggest reservation about going on YouTube is I used to have a television production company, and I absolutely could not watch myself.
No.
I would do some of the interviews, and I absolutely could not watch myself on TV. I'm like, no. Your voice doesn't sound the same that it does to you. So I got over that. I said, you know what does it matter? Who gives a shit anymore, you know? Let's just go have some fun.
What do your kids say about your videos? Do they watch them?
They don't.
They don't care.
I don't think, they've watched a couple, but they don't, they certainly don't binge watch or watch them all. But they're kind of, my kids, you know, it's been a little bit tough. I've been raising them by myself for the most part for the last few years. So, teenagers are tough, you know, and then you throw in some of those dynamics. But I saw a bumper sticker. This will help the story move along. Hire my teenager while I still know everything. So, you know, and our good friend Kai is going to be coming on shortly. You know, he's got a preteen, you know, so all of a sudden there's maybe a little bit of sass back that wasn't there a few months ago. What are yours now, 18, 16, and 14?
17, 15, and 13.
Okay, so, you know, you might be hearing a few things out of their mouth every once in a while. You're like, what? Oh, yeah. So my kids, they're starting to appreciate me more. I'm getting a little bit more of that as they get a little bit more mature.
Yeah.
But you know what? I knew all along I was just going to do the right thing, just keep my head down. And fortunately for me, I was able to retire last year. And that part of it was I had maybe one more year. I wanted to stick it out. And, you know, these days with insurances and you know, income. But it was their last year in school, and I wanted to spend time with them. We adopted them out of Guatemala, and it was a long journey for us. It was 7 years before we could actually have a family. And that came with a lot of loss. And when you have so much loss, then you love so much more. Not that we love anymore, but you have so much, there's so much there that you appreciate. Because I took a lot for granted myself in life, you know? Health. You know, the one thing for me is I was in a near fatal accident at age 23, and I survived it. And from that day, I never take a single day for granted. Not one single day. Because we're lucky to be here tomorrow.
Yeah.
Absolutely lucky to be here tomorrow.
Cheers. We could talk forever, but one of the things we're trying to do right now is break in SPTV studios and make sure all the equipment's working, and it looks like the cameras are still recording. It looks like the audio's still on. That means this was a success.
Yay.
Wanted everyone to meet Clearwater George.
Thank
Now,
you.
here's the thing. You're Clearwater George, but you're also surrounded by Scientology. What do you call yourself when you're on camera? How do you introduce yourself? Clearwater George? Even though it's not the name of your channel.
Yeah, I say this is Clearwater George, and my channel's surrounded by Scientology.
Okay.
But what's funny is most people, you know, and you've dropped a couple hints I'm showing up in different places.
Yeah.
We heard that Clearwater George might show up, or somebody's coming from Clearwater. You know, and some remember my name and some don't. But you know, it's who I am. I mean, I've been in Clearwater for a long time.
Yeah.
And what's really funny is, you know, I love downtown Dunedin. Well, I live across the street from that. I'm a block away from Dunedin, so I'm the last subdivision of Clearwater before we go to Dunedin.
Yeah.
To see some of our favorite people down there at Sterling and other places.
But I'll tell you what, before we finish up, though, even though you're Clearwater George, you're from Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just say a few words about your Chicago upbringing. What do you want to say?
great question because I had a fun time this weekend. I know about machines. I know about the Democrat machine in Chicago was one of the most powerful political machines ever. Mayor Daley. And it was all worked on patronage. You got a job with the city by becoming a community organizer for the Democrat Party. Didn't know that's what it was called at the time. You just knocked on doors and said, make sure you vote Democrat, vote for Dominic J. Lupo. Alderman.
That will get you a job with the city?
Here's how it worked. So, yes, it would. And you didn't get a job with the city if you didn't have a letter from the alderman. So I was in college at the time, so summer jobs. Soldier Field. Many people know some of these iconic places, right? Soldier Field opened up one day for the summer jobs, and there's a couple big tables, and the gate was open. The line is wrapped around Soldier Field with all the young kids. Who's got the letter from their alderman? You walked right to the front of the line. You went and sat at a table. Which job works best for you? You want to work at West Pullman Park? You want to work on Lake Michigan at Cal Park? Highest paid job's the garbage man. Well, I'll pass on the garbage man. That's how you got your job.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's called a community organizer. Now, something for your audience today. I hope they're as intrigued about this as I am. There's a young man that worked his way. His first political activism was community organizer on the south side of Chicago.
I know where you're going with this.
And the next neighborhood next to mine. I was in Roseland Pullman. He was in Elkgeld Gardens. And he parlayed that into President of the United States, Barack Obama.
Wow.
And he was the community organizer right down the street from where I was, maybe a few years after I was there. But here's the other interesting thing with that whole power structure I was telling you about. I'm sure there's corruption in a lot of cities, but Chicago had, I think it was 3 of the last 4 governors went to prison. I'm not sure how many.
Who was the guy? Who was the guy with the hair?
Yeah, Blagojevich.
Rob Blagojevich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and he was actually trying to sell Barack's seat when Barack vacated it. So let me come back to the ground swell or the actual ground stuff of corruption. I worked at the Park District, and paychecks would come on Friday, and our manager, a guy named Felix, he was sick that day. And the paychecks came, and I'm always kind of guy who wants to try and help out a little bit. So I see this stack of paychecks. I said, well, shit, we all got to get paid. So I start handing out all the paychecks to everybody. And there's 6 paychecks left over.
For the same guy?
No.
Oh.
No. But Felix comes in. You could tell he was like sick as a dog. Where's the paychecks? Where's the paychecks? I said, I handed them out. And he just his face just turned white. I go, oh, here's the extra ones. And I handed him the 6 extra paychecks. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's documented. People.
What, they have 6 different identities?
They had people on the payroll didn't work there.
Oh, no show jobs.
No show jobs.
Oh.
No show jobs. And then you have a vacant lot where 23 people registered to vote, that kind of stuff. And I got to experience it firsthand. So I grew up Catholic and Democrat in Chicago, but that was before I found out you had a choice.
That's a good line.
It's true.
That's a good line.
And so I went up there to visit. So I did my high school years there, went through high school and then went away to college and moved to Clearwater. But I wanted to go back and see these people in Chicago because the other little interesting aside is they're getting ready to protest in Chicago and they're looking at street closures and, who's got the permits and all this. And then the 4 speakers get lined up, and I'll leave his name out of it for right now. But it ends up being a childhood friend of mine from the same
you're talking the Scientology thing. I don't know.
At the Scientology opening, at the grand opening. And so he was one of the 4 speakers.
Yeah.
And I called him afterwards. I said, what do you think? And he goes, what are you talking about? He had no idea. He said, what's your beef with the church Scientology? And I told him. And he's running for an office. He said, well, I would be the person prosecuting crimes within that building. I said, no shit.
That's right. These guys, they get tricked into thinking that Scientology is just another local religious group. What's the problem?
Well, what had happened, Aaron, is he was the alderman. See, people don't understand, but in Chicago, it's aldermanic. 1 mayor, and there's 50 wards. And each ward has an alderman. And that's who you go to get your potholes fixed and whatever you need. And that's how that power structure that I explained earlier. Dominic J. Lupo. Okay, now, statutes of limitation are gone, but I did take my first bribe, and I'll explain this. My brother and I used to get crew cuts by Joe the Barber. And we were sitting there ready to get our crew cuts from Joe the Barber. Almost not quite as good as yours, but in walks Dominic J. Lupo, the Honorable Dominic J. Lupo, Alderman of the 9th Ward. And he comes up to my brother, and I said, boys, he goes, I'm a very important man, and I need to kind of get ahead of you here if I can. I need to get my hair cut right now. But don't worry, there's something in it for you. And he reached, he and my brother, I each a shiny quarter. And we got out of the barber chair, and he got his hair cut. And, well, the other funny thing, the barber, he had the phone on the wall, and he had the sink right there. He's cutting the hair, and the phone rings. And he goes over, and he would spit out his tobacco, and then he would, okay, and he would write down the numbers. He was also the bookie. Yeah, and that's how I grew up. That's how I grew up in the city of Chicago. So when I explained to this person, this high-profile politician in Chicago, that you may not want to hitch your wagon to this church, he said, they came to me 12 years ago about being approved for church by this building, along with 3 other churches at the same time. Right. And next door was a laundromat. Well, the laundromat got sold, and Columbia College put their building in. There was not a college there when Scientology bought the building. And like as you well know and have documented for me, yes, we're going to renovate these buildings. Yes. 12 years later.
Yeah. And
they reached out to the guy and said, you approved this, this was your award. Would you come and speak to us? I reread it the other day. It was like 3 sentences. And it was,
his speech?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
His speech and his formal statement.
Right.
The city of Chicago has broad shoulders, and we always welcome everybody. And some people get it, and just like this church gets it. And end of conversation. That was it. But he was like, well, thanks for helping me connect dots. I'm trying to get elected. So, yeah.
That is awesome. Yeah. Well, if he has a change of heart, and we haven't named his name, and that's on purpose, right. But if he has a change of heart and he wants to even take a public stand, politics aside, I mean, because the thing is, I want to support any politicians, party aside, any politicians who are willing to help call public attention to the need to have congressional hearings into Scientology's tax-exempt status and how they got it, and the Supreme Court rulings that are already on the record for why they should not qualify for tax exemption. Any politician that wants to help call attention to this issue, I would like to help support. Party politics aside.
I want to come back to Deltona in a second, but I want you to expand on the fact that a lot of people don't know how many Scientologists sued the IRS to precipitate them folding.
I mean, hundreds, right?
Thousands. I heard it was 2,200. Individual Scientologists sued IRS agents, sued the IRS, and it was fair game on our U.S. government. The largest infiltration with the FBI and IRS, those are things people don't realize. This is the same group. These are the people led by who? Who's the guy over there on Fort Harrison? The guy you can't see over the counter? What's his name?
David Miscavige.
That's him, that guy. So to close up on Chicago real quick, so I'm chatting with these people. Never met them before. Windy City Thayton and Free Xenu and a couple of the others that were there. So we start comparing notes. We're almost all from the same part of the city. And I don't know I don't know how they got involved. We didn't have a lot of time to talk about that aspect of it, but it's really kind of cool. And then one of them even said, turn your mic off for a second. And then he wanted to tell me that he had dated the founder of Six with my cousins. He dated the guy's daughter. And he knew the connection. So I was like, wow, I am home. This is really cool. I'm home. So back to politicians. So that's the Chicago thing. You talk about how they get bamboozled. So they send out all the letters for celebrate L. Ron Hubbard was a great American. The proclamation. So now all of a sudden we see this news. Somebody uncovered it. The city of Deltona, Florida, the mayor issued a proclamation celebrating L. Ron Hubbard's birthday. And when they pulled up the email that the mayor used was the the prototype of the template. And they just inserted the city of Deltona, and then he did that proclamation. Well, people said, what are you, crazy? So he had to rescind the proclamation, right? Well, I wanted to go find out if I can get somebody at the city hall to talk to me. So I was traveling, go to Daytona Beach for Bike Week, which I put on my channel to show another yet Florida type of waterfront community that's so vibrant. And I stop in Deltona, and I go walking up to the building. This lady's walking out. I said, excuse me, ma'am, do you work here? And she said, yes, I do. I said, well, we're live on YouTube. I said, do you mind being on camera? She said, no. I said, well, I'm trying to find out about this proclamation that the mayor did, and do you know anything about this? She said, yeah, I'm one of the city councilmen. And she went ahead, and the quote, and I think it's in my shorts, she says, we do not condone cults around here. She was not afraid to speak out. She went on record with the newspaper. She went on record with me.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And that was a perchance. I mean, did that just happen by accident? It did, but was there a reason? Yeah.
That is amazing. All right. Well, those are some of your stories, and hopefully hundreds more to come.
Well, I'm saving the one where Leah Remini walks up to this beautiful place in Clearwater where they're going to bring her and her children. Oh, she gets to come to this wonderful paradise, Clearwater, and they swing the door open. It's 8 mattresses on the floor of a 2-bedroom apartment over House in the Garden, and my friend had just put the phones in. And he's like, "You wouldn't believe this, George." So he's telling me the story independent, and then I hear Leah talking about it on the Aftermath show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we got a few more. We'll continue this.
Awesome. Thank you for doing this with me.
Yeah, man.
Let's do it again
Always
soon.
a pleasure.